This is the Headspace. We are it again. And due to, should I call it popular demand, we're addressing an issue that is kind of the culmination of a conversation we've been having about greats, about goats. But before we get into that,
okay,
it's still your brother VJ from the Ancient Mother. Yeah, well, and today sizoti banisa yongela gaga into a formidable capdom of conversation. The issue of greatness is probably the biggest issue in hip hop. I think mainly because hip hop, stemming from oppressed people, was an extension of trying to empower oneself. Everything you do is an attempt to regain your power, and hip-hop was no different. We see beautiful styles of movement and sound and power, but behind all of that, I think we should never forget that hip-hop is ultimately a political act of freedom. It was a way that young people were trying to gain back their power against the system, which was and still is suppressing them psychologically and economically, right?
Yeah.
So the issue of being the best you can be is a very personal thing.
Yeah.
Whether you are a b-boy, whether you are an MC, whether you are a graph writer, you do it because, number one, you've lived a life that has reinforced the fact that awusozuphumelele ufikelele to heights that will be sustainable for yourself and those you love. This is a condition that characterizes a lot of oppressed people. So, one, we should understand that whenever we hear rappers flossing, whenever we see rappers talking about how great they are, whenever we hear this constant thread of rappers elevating themselves to the status of gods, you know, the most famous one being Kanye West, literally declaring, I am a god. We should always understand the context that comes from. That when you've grown up most of your life, seeing people like you and seeing and feeling yourself experiencing this heavy yoke of whiteness and capitalist colonial oppression on top of you, once you get a little bit of power through an ability that you have, you relish it. And the moment Ubonuba Leando has the capacity to help you grow economically, to help you help others, to help you help yourself, obviously you have the right to declare, and I am the best. You know, that is no sin. Each and every one of us should believe in ourselves. Each and every one of us should understand what we're good at and channel that in order to help ourselves and help others if we can. So, number one, we should define what greatness means in order for us to go anywhere with this conversation. Now, the definition and the understanding of great is doing something to the level at which it not only benefits you, but it ends up expanding beyond your own benefit.
Which is impact.
Yeah, the actual dictionary definition of great is an above average quality of excellence.
Okay.
So you get people who do something good, you get people who do something better, but you get people who do something the best. And those are the ones that we can call great, right? So greatness is, you have a soccer player. You can be a good soccer player and be recognized amongst your peers as a great team player, as somebody who helps a team win or consistently sustain itself. But to be a great soccer player is to be the kind of player that makes even people who wouldn't necessarily take a liking for soccer look at you and say, So there is something about greatness where the person's qualities transcend their space and allow for others to appreciate a skill or a quality, and it's important in society. Now Caesars are back to hip-hop, particularly in the issue of being a rapper. Rap is a tradition that in its growth started off as a person giving the DJ hype. Right? And then from that, these hype men of DJs started to compete amongst each other.
Yeah.
Ukuba afondini, I've got the dopest rhymes. Hi, I've got the dopest rhymes. So what thus began this one-upmanship of rap competitiveness that we now feel and see today. This idea about unswambu at getting the party started. I need to find a way to defeat you.
Yeah.
You know, it reminds me of that. I know you know that classical beef between Busy B. Yeah, no cool Modi.
Yeah.
I feel like that's where the tradition of battling can actually be referenced back to in a mythical way. How Busy B represented an old school style of emceeing. The style of emceeing that said raising the crowd's energy is the most important thing, right?
Yeah.
And he was known in the streets and in all of the block parties and in all of the clubs for being the guy that knew how to get the party started. Oh, Cool Modi knew Bachonga. I can't get the party started in Jengalekag, but what I can do is write. What I can do is say some of the most amazing things that will make the crowd go crazy.
Wow. Yeah.
And at that point in time, Busy B never anticipated another angle. Everybody who tried to defeat Busy B,
they will
try to outdo him at his own game.
Yeah.
Cool Modi won that battle in a way that I think we should realize. He didn't play to the strengths of his opponent. He played to his own strengths.
Yeah.
Now if MCs are listening to this, that's how you win. In the industry, you will always be kind of motivated to try and play to somebody else's strengths. Whoever that person currently is who's dominating. But the way that you get to shine is by understanding what makes you different. What can you do extraordinarily well that you can overpower this guy's great quality. And so I think in this conversation of greatness and the conversation of the tradition of wanting to be the best, the evolution of MCing has grown golotho.
Yeah.
MCs who get the party started were in a sense outclassed by MCs with more poetic resonance, and in a sense it grew to a writing direction.
Yeah.
And then when it grew to a writing direction and came to a kind of a point where it felt like it couldn't go any further, it returned back to the party, you know.
Yeah.
And when it returned going into the party and it feels like it can't get any further than that, it goes back to the writing. So I think one thing you'll notice is that rap has a cycle of going from the party to the lyrics, to the party, to the lyrics. And in a sense, if you notice this thing, these things are not contradictory, and every great MC understands that you need to have the both qualities, but you won't be great equally in both of them. So you need to always find a way in your personality or whatever, your voice, your delivery, whatever it is about you, to separate you from this class. So I think the conversation of greatness, Kengogo, involves people who push beyond what has been done before and help the culture grow beyond the people who love it and help it develop and go to the everyday person. That's why Kakutetwa about grades, we always have similar names. And if we notice what these people have in common, it's the fact that if you ask the average person in the street, Uyamazu Jay-Z, Uyamazu Tupac, Uyamazu Eminem, they'll say, but if
DMX, they say,
but if you ask them, Uyamazu Immortal Technique, Uyamazu Cannabis,
Uyamazu Pheromone,
you know, Uyamazu Mos Def.
Yeah, then
very rarely.
Yeah,
you know, and so this is my argument. I want to see what you get to what you say after that. Mass appeal plays the greatest role in greatness. You can't be great if you haven't been able to extend beyond your own niche group. And I know a lot of people will say, but Vijay, mass appeal is helped by the fact that a lot of these guys are backed by big companies who help deliver this music and distribute it across the world. So not all of us have that privilege. Utini wanatake?
Great. I wouldn't say I have an argument, but we always have our favorites, right? But they are not necessarily E-grades. But we also want to put them quick grades because like always we title about
they are great to us.
Yeah, they are great to us. But I think most of the conversation always revolves about E-greatness and the goats. You must separate your favorites with goats. Just because mna ndithanda uFaro Monch, ndiqheba ndithi no man, he's more greater artist than Jay-Z.
Right.
Just because of preference. Okay, not necessarily preference, favoritism, but qhaba ndiyamthanda. Ayizusebenza lo way. Yebo, ayizusebenza. So I don't think mna ndinayo ukuba ndiyawu-arguisha. I'm not arguing. I'm actually endleleni eyi-one. Nyani, we need to separate nyani E-grades from our favorites.
Right.
And another thing is that you always find that the guys who are our favorites, they are mad talented. So I think it also goes to that just because another talent doesn't make him a great.
Something that I want us to use and help us outline this conversation as it evolves is the role of the industry and pop culture in giving people choices of what to buy into.
Oh, okay.
Because this is the argument. The argument from heads is that we shouldn't use mass appeal as a measure of greatness because it isn't an instrument of hip-hop. It's an instrument of capitalism. So what happens is the only reason Jay-Z is more well known than Big L is because Jay-Z wangled himself, hustled himself, worked himself into a position where he was backed by major corporate powers which could put him on the largest channels, distribute him in the largest sources, and as a result, is it Big L's fault that he did not have the industry power that a Jay-Z has? So ultimately then, is it fair to judge L according to a standard that isn't dependent on his skill, but is dependent on the arms that exist around him, the greater kind of political influences that help determine what gets to be seen in the popular scope? This is the argument that heads want to come up with, and they'll say no, but why are we always talking about Tumi? Why are we talking about Ricky Rick? Why are we talking about AKA? Why do we talk about the same faces when the only reason that these people are well known is simply because they flow within the stream, the mainstream dialogue, and are hence backed by major corporate agenda and power, and that there are MCs who are
equally
better you know, than them, who lack this same kind of industry muscle. So now this goes back to representatives of hip-hop to say, if you call yourself a hip-hop head, you recognize the greatness of an MC based on their qualities in the art form, not so much on the backing of industry power. This is the conversation that heads have. Now, what do you say about that?
So meaning now, in order to get these guys on this great topic, so funeke simkili popular mass appeal,
right?
So meaning now it must be only due to originality, technicality, emotional depth,
right,
and consistency,
right, within hip-hop circles.
Within hip-hop circles.
Now, because mass appeal is the great denominator here. So I feel like the conversation around who is great and who isn't has always been a tug of war around, does mass appeal truly matter? Because heads are split on this. There are hip-hop heads who truly believe those rappers who have been backed by industry power and who have, as a result, been pushed forward in the popular scope, have helped the culture of hip-hop grow immensely and have been able to give back to hip-hop in order for the general culture as a whole to grow. So it's not a matter of being vehemently against capitalism, but it's working with capitalism to know how to take from this capitalist system and regain some power for yourself, so you can again empower yourself and others.
Yeah.
Then there are heads who say, nah, fuck that. The white man hijacked rap, he hijacked hip-hop, and as a result, if we're here to accredit and acknowledge those who are backed by industry power, who are backed by all of this mass-marketed agenda that we see, we're selling out. Hence the term sell out really comes from rappers whose stigma is attached to the fact that the only reason that you matter is because you are marketable. Well, what do you say to this argument? Does mass appeal, is mass appeal good for hip-hop, or is mass appeal not good for hip-hop? Is mass appeal a measure of greatness, or is mass appeal a measure of weakness?
But it goes back, if you're gonna say, I fuck that, you're selling out, why do you make music in the first place?
Okay.
Yeah, bro.
Okay.
Why do you make music in the first place? Because I know a lot of heads will say that, but I know fuck it, the industry, but at the same time we'll try to get you to support him and buy his album or whatever. But that's also capitalism.
Right.
And that capitalism,
that's
always touting say CD or you selling your music out there. You want other people to consume this product that will have.
Yeah.
So just because you're doing it in a smaller scale, you're throwing stone at someone obviously who got a platform to do it in a larger scale and you work about Uti, yeah, now we sell out. It's kind of ironic though.
It is, and I think here's where the contradiction kind of lies. The concept of economy is an old one. As Africans, we had our own indigenous ways of managing resources. Whether you want to call it bartering, whether you want to call it all things in common, whether you want to call it mutual beneficial sharing, the idea of taking a skill and a resource that you have, Takeza, and using it to empower your community, and hence your community giving you something back in return, is not a concept we were taught by white people. So the idea of commerce, the idea of commodity, and the idea of taking something that you can do and giving it to others in exchange for something back is not a new concept. And so where heads tend to have the kind of backlash is that hip-hop in itself is a community, and heads feel like rappers or any other practitioners of the art form who give more to the general industry than back to this community are sellouts, and we cannot regard them as great. The question will always be, what has this dude done for hip-hop in general? And so we have to look at the names that get mentioned pretty often, and I don't want us to always blow it up to America because Mzansi. So Mzansi, you've had names like AKA, names like Pro Kid, names like Proverb, names like Squatter Camp. Who am I forgetting?
Even Otumina is mentioned.
You know, you've had pretty much a sense of a dominant range of names that float in the conversation of who is the greatest. And whenever you bring these names up, some people want to say, no, but that's simply because they're active in a particular space, which is Johannesburg. And because that place is South Africa's industry hub, that's how they grow, that's how they become inundated in our faces, all over our radio stations and our television sets and our phones and what have you. But they are real talents. And here's what I say to that. Heads, we are now in the construct of capitalism. We live within it, and any kind of revolution, any kind of configuration, any kind of empowerment, because remember we started this conversation of greatness by talking about power. Hip-hop was started by people who felt powerless, who wanted to empower themselves and those around them and develop their communities. If you look at what capitalism does, capitalism is an already established base of powers who come from Europe and all over and the global west, right? They come, they implant themselves onto Africa, and they use Africans to enrich themselves. Okay, let's work with that. Now, when we're working within this capitalist system, it brings about this kind of conversation of, can you defeat the system from within? And I am one of those who say you can. You can. Sometimes the case, in order for you to remove a thorn from your foot, the best way to do it is to take another thorn. And I love that. And I love that analogy, because I feel like capitalism is that thorn. Because what capitalism does, it limits us to a way of saying you earn a living by getting money. You get money by having a skill. You get skill by being educated. You get educated by studying under a certain kind of tutelage. So hip-hop is no different. Rapping is a skill. DJing is a skill. B-boying is a skill. And there is a market, an artistic market for these skills. And if we are able to use these skills to empower ourselves and our families, we are, in a sense, in fact, in the most powerful sense, growing the culture and growing ourselves and growing the whole general hip-hop populace. So this idea that when a person is flourishing capitalistically, they are only being a benefit for themselves and they are being a sellout is a contradiction. I feel like it's a beta expression of people whose level and whose capacity of success doesn't match that person. There tends to be a lot of envy for cats who have been able to make millions in the practice of hip-hop versus those who probably swim amongst the thousands. And I feel like we should understand that, brothers and sisters, we're all in this together. This culture is for us all, and there is power in having a major capitalist icon in the form of a Jay-Z, because what that does is that it tells us that you can wangle within capitalism, and based on your politics you can use the money that you have to give back to your community.
Look at it in a positive way, my motivated number, I wanna be like that guy.
Right.
Not to up now and be like, I suka, he had this and this and this. Now Sabenza now Fumane's way.
Exactly. Yeah. And I feel like ultimately it's not making money that's the problem. It's what you do with it. So in essence, what I feel, is that greatness is when you are able to take your success and again empower the community that empowered you. So when we're using that measuring rod, take somebody like a Kuli Chan, who took his marketability, who took the success of Otswada, of Hu Hapeli Hape, and he can be on a KFC advert, but he can create something like a Mufftown Heights, which employs people, which brings the masses and the attention to hip hop.
On all the upcoming artists to come and perform there.
Exactly.
Now, alongside these greats.
Exactly. Yeah. So now I feel like the ultimate measure of greatness is that we get somebody like Ricky Rick,
R.I.P. anyway.
Peace, who was able to take and create a movement like the Cotton Fest, where he empowers people from the fashion side, people in the music side, people in making in the aspect of making food, basically a whole economy, and give back to the people who gave to him, and constantly support those coming up, his peers, and sustaining himself and the economy in general. We can talk about
Uslika, he created Uslika on live,
right?
And recently he dropped I think it's something that's also like DistroKid, where artists can distribute their music easily through these channels, through that app. I forgot the name of it.
That's powerful.
And I remember that the first artist who signed on that on that initiative is Touchline. That's where he dropped Suntu.
That's powerful.
Yeah, but that's powerful, and
So
that's giving back.
that's ultimately. So would we be far-fetched then in saying what separates the greats from our favorites is that our favorites are with us in moments of intimacy, and our favorites empower us on a personal level. You like a rapper because of his anecdotal writing and what it does for your experience as a human being. But a great is somebody who empowers you personally but also publicly, who allows for the space that you're active in to flourish. So by naming people like the Kuli Chanas and the Ricky Ricks and any other icon in rap and hip hop in South Africa who's been able to take what capitalism gives them and use that power to expand and to develop the South African hip hop economy, then that becomes the ultimate measure of greatness. Because to be great is to understand who those that made you as well.
Yeah, one last thing also, we're also not only emphasizing on the, say, your commercially Landruka, what you say, commercially is brazos that we know.
Yes.
Okay, you know, there's also guys who, when they made their money, like Prophets of the City.
Right.
Yeah, when they made this money, what they did was OTJ Landruka or Ready D. They started tutoring people on how to DJ.
Yeah.
That's also giving back.
That's empowerment.
Studios for people to come and record, because when they got this success, there's in order for my cool culture, let's have studios. And so it's all not only about festivals or something that is more out there. Also in a macro level,
yeah,
there are people who are giving back.
Great point, I guess, because it really ultimately, I love the word economy. I love it because of its etymology. Economy simply means house management or home management.
Yeah.
And economy is a way of sustaining the home that made you, building it and expanding it. So ultimately, I think the measure of a great practitioner of any art form, of anything in fact, and here we're talking about particularly hip-hop and more specifically rap. A rapper that has taken their fame, or whatever you want to call it, their notoriety, and was able to build the house, the home of hip-hop in general, and empower those coming after them, and expand the game to a level that is able to continuously develop its capacity to liberate others, is a person who deserves to be called great. And others can simply be people we love and respect for their role.
So we are not dropping the mass appeal. We can't drop mass appeal
at all. It's probably the most important part of what makes a great MC, and ultimately what it brings the conversation to is that we shouldn't all, in fact I feel like we shouldn't be in pursuit of mass appeal. The only thing that an artist and a practitioner of hip-hop should be in pursuit of is their own self-improvement.
Yeah.
What hip-hop does for you is it can be a form of therapy to help you go through this world a little bit better. It can be a way to gain perspective in the world. And its ability to do that is what matters the most. We shouldn't get caught up in this rat race of money to an extent where that becomes the aim. Because I feel those who managed to make the most money weren't always trying to make that money, and don't sustain it by always trying to make more of it. They make money because they do what they love doing.
Yeah.
And they understand how it empowers them. So I'd like to leave this conversation off on that note, that not having mass appeal doesn't disqualify you from being valuable. And the fact that we can't all be greats.
Yeah.
Right? And that doesn't disqualify greatness to being a quality that a few individuals amongst us gain. Because here's the thing, Takeza. Those who have emerged in the midst of us as the quote-unquote chosen ones have done so through our support. So really,
we put them there.
We put them there. So this is not a person, because I know in hip-hop there's also the tendency of saying, I'm self-made. You know how Drake says, came up, that's all me, stay true, it's all, no man, it's not all you, it can never be you. Where there is a story of a great, there are people in behind the scenes who helped pull strings, who helped support this person. And I feel like great people are a representative of a larger energy. They are not the ones who are better than us. They are the ones who help speak on our behalf of all of our power, of all of our strength. So whenever you talk about a GOAT, don't look at that person as being the best out of everyone. Look at that person as being an elect, a person who represents the greatest capacity of what this can do, because they have been given that power by the people. So that way, GOATness, greatness, is not up to the person, it's up to the age, right? So this is how this definition of greatness can be healthy for all of us. We respect those who are our representatives, and in turn they understand that they represent us. Anything more to add? Yeah. So hip hop heads, get at us. We say greatness is representing the culture at large and being a servant of the movement, the one who has been chosen to transcend the space and make others realize the value of the culture as a whole. So when we're having all these GOAT series episodes, when we're mentioning certain names, when we're overlooking what you feel is a great rapper, ask yourself what your criteria is. Are you mad because we are not mentioning somebody whose music you enjoy? Or do you really objectively feel that this person has been a major representative who has given back to the economy of South African hip-hop on a greater level? Heads must account. We mustn't always debate. We must understand that these debates are based on standards, and what the Headspace is here to do is raise the standard of the debate. It's VJ,
and don't forget to comment. Facebook, comment here on YouTube. Tell us there on the comment section. Anyway,
in a nutshell, what separates your favorite from the greats? Responsibility. I'm out.